Alright, welcome to Lesson 2 of Unit 7, Operations with Radical Expressions. It's gonna get radical. Alright, I had to say that joke. So, definition of a radical expression is an expression with a radical. Yes, this slide needed that definition. I wanted to dedicate it to that difficult definition. An example of a radical expression is this: the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now we're going to work with this, and we're going to work with another variation of this because it's going to lead up to what we call the quadratic formula, and it's going to help us later. So we're going to get used to it now and do some radical expressions with it. So here are two radical expressions. And these radical expressions work like any other expression we worked with since the beginning of the year. If we have the expression and we're told variables and what they equal, we can substitute in those numbers and we can simplify. So we have b squared minus 4ac, the square root of that entire thing, and we know that a equals 1, b equals 2, and c equals 0. So we're just going to plug it in. So the square root of our b, which is 2 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 0. And then we simplify. So 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 0 is 0. So this is plus 0, but we don't need to write plus 0. So all we have is the square root of 4. From here we're going to simplify our radical. So the square root of 4, well, we know that's going to be plus or minus 2. So the second example, we have the square root of b squared minus 4ac. We know that a equals 2, b equals negative 1, and c equals negative 3. So we have negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. Alright, this gives us negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 3 is a positive 24. 1 plus 24 is 25. So this one is nice too because it's a perfect square. So this is plus or minus 5. And over here I put an equal sign, and I shouldn't have put an equal sign because it's not an equation, it's an expression. So, okay, here are two examples I want you to, with your group, pause the video and work through now. And here are the solution to those two examples. And if you'll notice that as we simplified, we could not simplify these radicals, so we had to stick with our square root of 13 and our square root of 65. So sometimes this happens where you can't simplify the radical, which I'm sure you've ran into in our previous lesson. Okay, there's another type of radical expression we are going to work with, and again, this is part of the quadratic formula that we're eventually going to learn. And this is the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And it works just like our previous examples did. So let's plug in. So we have the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2, all divided by 2 times 2. So let's simplify. We get the square root of 25. Negative 4 times 2 is 8. Negative 8. Negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. 2 times 2 is 4. 25 minus 16 is the square root of 9 over 4. The square root of 9 is 3, plus or minus 3, over 4. And there we go. Alright, so that is our second type of expression. So what I want you to do now is to try this last example with your group by pausing the video, so go ahead and do that now. Alright, now this one was a bit tricky. That's why I saved the best for last. When you get to this point here, the square root of 20, you know you can simplify the square root of 20, so that's what you do. I use the perfect square method because that's just the one I prefer. And after I did that, I got that it was plus or minus 2 root 5, and then we had our divide by 2. Now, something you should note down here by the start example, you cannot simplify things inside a radical and things outside a radical. You can only go outside with outside, inside with inside. That's why we couldn't simplify these two. But if we break it down, we can, because we get this plus or minus 2 on the outside and a 2 on our denominator. So they're both on the outside, so we can simplify our 2 and our 2, and we're left with a plus or minus square root 5. And just one more thing I want to highlight with these is, you've noticed that every time I substitute, I always substitute it in parentheses. This is very important that you do that, because it kind of helps you keep everything organized. So anytime you do a substitution, make sure you keep it in parentheses.